All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great start to your week. We have an absolutely jam-packed show for you guys this morning. I had put together 10 big takeaways from a wild Monday night in the NBA. We were going to literally bounce around to every single game. I watched bits and pieces of every single game from last night. We had all sorts of game winners and clutch shots and wild statistical performances and so many interesting things to get into. And then right before I was about to press record this morning, Nico Harrison got fired. So we are going to lead with my quick thoughts on the Nico Harrison firing. And then we will finish the show today with 10 big takeaways from a wild Monday night in the NBA. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing incredible work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Keep following us over there for more content throughout the season. And then keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments. Full episodes on YouTube. Go into the comments, write mailbag, write your question. We get to them on Fridays throughout the regular season. And then last but not least, before we get started today, we have started a new partnership, a continuation of our partnership with Playback, this year geared around watch parties, watch-alongs. We did our first one on Saturday night, just kind of a little test run with Hawks Lakers. Learned a lot. We're going to make some tweaks as we move forward. But we are continuing that tonight with the showdown. That's tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night. We are continuing that with the showdown between the Lakers and the Thunder. We'll have 3 more watch parties this week. We're doing Lakers Thunder on Wednesday night, Spurs Warriors on Friday night, and then Lakers Bucks on Saturday night. But make sure you guys come join us on Wednesday night for a watch along. We're going to be focused on the games. We're going to be breaking it down as it all goes down. We'll be taking callers and stuff along the way. So make sure you guys come hang out on Wednesday night. All right, let's talk some basketball. So not too much to say here about the Nico Harrison firing. I thought Nico actually did a decent job with the Mavs until he didn't. Like, for a guy who didn't believe in Luka Doncic, he did know how to build around him. He basically invented the Luka Doncic team construct that we all think about today, right? Athletic centers that he can hit for lobs in a 4-out, 1-in spacing concept. A secondary ball handler that can roughly approximate his style, that doesn't necessarily need to be a superstar, but that can kind of fit into the same sort of 4-out, 1-in, ISO pick and roll, make the decisions, make the shots type of system. And then surround him with athleticism and guys that can knock down open catch and shoot threes, drive closeouts, basically athletic 3-and-D guys. And I mean, come on, they won 5 playoff series over the previous 3 seasons of the Luka era before the trade. That's not all bad. But ultimately, he just galaxy brained himself out of the perfect situation. To be clear, I'm not in any way justifying the trade. It's the dumbest trade in NBA history. There's absolutely no excuse for it. But I can at least see the genesis of where his brain started to go. Luka was clearly leaving a lot of meat on the bone with his potential. As crazy as that sounds with how good he was through the first 5-6 years of his career, he wasn't taking care of his body. He was playing at a weight that was affecting his performance negatively. He was starting to succumb to nagging injuries that even began in the 2024 season as he was banged up with his knee throughout that playoff run. And he looked like he hadn't learned his lesson. And he kind of hit rock bottom last year, right? Like, even after the Lakers trade, he was soundly outplayed by Anthony Edwards in that first round playoff series. But the crucial flaw in Nico's logic, and I can't even believe this needs to be explained, but he failed to realize that Luka was inevitably going to figure it out at some point. He failed to account for Luka's best trait, which is his alpha dog competitiveness. If he was fat and lazy, and if he was losing ground against his peers, it would inevitably over time lead to disappointing losses. Those disappointing losses would inevitably lead to Luka getting pissed off. And if he got pissed off, he would finally, eventually look in the mirror, take accountability, and make the changes he need to make to become the best version of himself. And by the way, he was obviously very close to reaching that point. He got his butt kicked by Ant and the Wolves. He changed last summer. Now he's averaging 37, 9, and 9 on 63% true shooting for an 8-3 team in the West, despite them being pretty light on talent with the LeBron James injury and the other injuries they've dealt with this year. He's looking like the best player in the world, or at least in the conversation. Nico essentially committed the unforgivable sin. He took a franchise that was legitimately a perennial championship contender on the strength of a transcendently great star that was just barely entering his prime, and he chopped it off at the knees. And he should be incredibly thankful that the Mavs won the lottery and that Mavs fans at least have the tiny glimmer of hope that is Cooper Flagg, who, by the way, had an amazing night last night against Giannis and the Bucks. Because otherwise, this team would be in the dark ages for years to come. Now, Mavs fans, it's not over. You have a terribly unbalanced roster, but you have Cooper Flagg, a player that I truly believe in. And you do have the assets to quickly pivot into an advanced stage of a rebuild. But the bottom line is you should never have had to make that pivot to begin with. You should be contending for the title out west right now. And you're not, because Nico outsmarted himself and made the dumbest trade in NBA history. I'm sorry that happened to you guys, but I'm sure you're all very happy to see Nico finally gone from the organization. All right, let's dig into our 10 big takeaways from last night's wild Monday night NBA slate. So first of all, first takeaway, Cade Cunningham had an all-time empty the clip game last night in a big win against the Washington Wizards in overtime. The box score watchers were upset last night. Cade missed 31 shots. I was seeing all sorts of takes flying around about the way he was playing and the shot chucking. And so I was excited to go watch because I obviously, like, I've watched Cade a bunch this year, and he's been a guy that's been pretty quick to take the reads, especially as he's faced a lot of blitzes and doubles. And so I just wanted to see why. I knew that it wasn't like Cade just woke up yesterday and was like, shit, guys, I'm going to be a ball hog today. Like that's not how basketball works, and that's not how Cade operates. So I was just curious to see what happened that caused him to play that style. And here's the thing. Did I love every single shot that he took last night? No, there were some tough ones in there. There were some settles. But literally every star in the NBA takes a half dozen or so really tough shots every game. What immediately stood out to me was that the Pistons needed him to score. And he kept consistently generating great looks for himself, and he was just missing them. The Pistons were on their third game in 4 nights. Karis LeVert was out. That's their backup guard right now. Asar Thompson was out. Tobias Harris was out. Jaden Ivey obviously still out. Isaiah Stewart was out. Marcus Sasser is one of their backup guards. He's out. So many of the guys who they usually depend on to share the offensive load with Cade were just out. And again, I thought Cade was getting good looks. The Wizards, unlike many of Detroit's opponents as of late, they were playing some pretty passive coverages with Cade. A lot of drop coverage looks, a lot of single coverage. So a lot of Cade's shoot pass reads were skewing towards him shooting the ball. They were high percentage shots for him. There have been other games this year where the coverages have dictated. He's faced a lot of blitzes and doubles this year. The coverages have dictated him to become more of a passer. I've talked about literally yesterday in the show about how he had essentially made opportunities for himself to be aggressive in spite of the double team so that he could stay involved offensively. But he's been a guy who's been facing super aggressive coverages. He wasn't last night. He needed to be a scorer, especially with the way that the roster shaped up with the 3 games in 4 nights and the injuries they've been dealing with. Clearly, Washington was like, you're going to have to score 1 million points. We don't think you have the legs for it without the support that you have. And that gamble almost paid off for Washington. Of his 31 misses, there were 20 or so that were really good looks for him. Like he missed some tough layups, but there were at least a half dozen that were like super high percentage layups, like layups he'd make 90% of the time usually. Another half dozen layups that were like, he probably is going to make that 55% of the time, that all just went out. He got a ton of good looks on short jumpers and threes that he just left short, presumably because he was gassed. And most importantly, they got the win. Couple of huge threes late in regulation from Dennis Jenkins, including a buzzer beater out of the right corner that sent the game to overtime. There's a really fun crowd pop at OT as Javonte Green drove along the baseline out of the left corner and threw down a nasty tomahawk dunk, and the Pistons fans got to go home happy. So what I saw was a superstar player who was physically available for his team during a brutal part of their schedule where much of the roster wasn't. And he absorbed a ton of usage because he had to. And he dropped 46, 12, and 11 with just 2 turnovers and got a win. And by the way, if he has a more normal shooting performance on the quality of shots that he got, he'd have had 60. I think the Pistons have a good one with Cade Cunningham. They have the superstar they need to lead their team through the next era of Pistons basketball. He keeps hitting every single checkpoint along the way. Second big takeaway from last night. Victor Wembanyama has his groove back. The Bulls were without Josh Giddey last night, but that didn't stop them from giving the Spurs a really tough battle. They rode some hot shooting from Kevin Huerter and some good advantage creation from Trey Jones and Nikola Vucevic, and they really played fun drive and kick hoops, and they played beautiful basketball, and they gave the Spurs some issues. They controlled most of the second half, and they led by as much as 13 in this game. But Victor Wembanyama finally woke up from his double team induced slump in a big way in that second half. Victor had averaged just 17 points per game over his previous 4 games. He had 18 points just in the fourth quarter last night. He got going off of a skip pass from Luke Cornett. We talked a lot about how De'Aaron Fox was going to help Victor start generating some easier shots for himself where he doesn't have to do all the work, but he can kind of be a beneficiary of the attention that De'Aaron draws. Ran a little ball screen on the left side of the floor, Fox and Cornett, and Fox hits Cornett in the pocket. The low man had already stepped over to help. Cornett makes the skip to Wemby. Wemby gets a wide open 3 in the right corner that gets him going. But from there, it was a steady diet of one-on-one basketball. The Bulls, we've talked about how the Spurs have faced a lot of putting a wing on Wemby who gets up underneath him and then aggressive gapping and double teaming. Right, a lot of doubles, testing Wemby's ability to handle the ball through physicality and just making him uncomfortable by getting up underneath him. The Bulls went with a very different approach. They basically guarded him with centers, so Jalen Smith and Nikola Vucevic, and rather than sending double teams or pressuring the ball, they were sagging off and they were playing in the gaps. So basically allowing Victor Wembanyama to work comfortably in his face-up game and in his off-the-dribble game, as long as he was willing to settle, because the driving lanes weren't there because they were playing in the gaps. They were essentially in, we're going to just let Wemby take jump shots mode. And Wemby burned them. He hit a little face-up mid-ranger in the middle of the floor against Jalen Smith. He hit another one over Nikola Vucevic on the right elbow extended. And then he basically won the game with 2 pull-up threes over Nikola Vucevic, one in transition and one in the half court where he waved everybody off. And once again, Vucevic was giving him space and he just kind of got into his bag and got into a little step back going to his left and knocked it down. All while doing the usual Wemby defensive damage on the other end of the floor. There was an interesting play late in the game where Trey Jones got a really nice driving lane down the left lane line. And Victor was guarding in the strong side corner. And the general principle is don't help off the strong side corner. There are some teams that do it, but generally speaking, you're not supposed to. And Victor was kind of staying home. Like he was in the driving lane a tiny bit, but for the most part, he wasn't offering help on the drive. But Trey Jones just panicked because he thought Wemby might go for it. And so instead of taking the wide open left-handed layup he had on the left lane line, he went like up and under and tried this super difficult reverse layup on the right side, and he smoked it. An example of the defensive impact of Wemby that'll never show up in the box score. But Wemby, again, you can call it coverage specific because, again, there wasn't the wing, the big forward on the ball. There wasn't the aggressive double teaming. But I thought it was just at the very least good for his confidence. The coverage challenge remains. He's going to face teams that put forwards on him, that get up underneath him, that bring double teams. But on the one hand, this is a reminder that you kind of have to guard him that way. Like if you let him work single coverage against your center, he's just going to fry those dudes. And that's what he did. But on the other hand, it kind of gives Wemby a little confidence boost as he continues to work through the challenge that is that coverage and what he's going to have to deal with as he continues to develop in his young career. Today's show is brought to you by our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. We've entered into our favorite time of the year. Between the NBA and college hoops, there's basketball on every night. And every night is a shot to score a major bucket on Hard Rock Bet. You're home for hoops action all season long. If you haven't tried your first bet on Hard Rock Bet yet, there's still time for you to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you get not only your winnings, but $150 in extra bonus bets. And if you're not sure what to place your first bet on, check out the Hard Rock Bet Stats Hub. It's loaded with trends, streaks, and stats to help guide your picks. Numbers don't lie, and neither does the data in there. Check out the Stats Hub now, get the edge, and bet with confidence. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in Florida, and it's also live in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado. Coming soon to more states too. Plus, Hard Rock Bet offers new promos every single day. So whenever you're listening, just open the app and check out what you've got any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app and make your first deposit. Number 3, another Spurs takeaway. Steph Castle is an absurdly gifted interior passer. Another 11 assists for Stephon Castle last night. His third straight game with double-digit assists. I believe he has 37 assists over the previous 3 games. He's averaging 8 assists per game on the season now. After having some turnover issues to start the year, we had talked about that earlier, like last week. He has just 3 turnovers over his last 2 games. And again, that's in a stretch where he has 24 assists and 32 field goal attempts. So that's a lot of usage with him mostly taking care of the ball. So I thought that was a good step forward for him as well. But the interior passing is what amazes me. It dawned on me early in the season with the lob passes. He just has a really natural gift for timing where and when to hit a vertical spacer in their jump. He hit like a half dozen more lobs tonight. It's not just Wemby either. He's got wonderful chemistry with Luke Cornett. I think like 3 or 4 of the lobs he connected on last night were just from last night were to Cornett. And obviously it's very nice to have Cornett back. Him being out of the lineup was definitely a problem for the Spurs over that little bit of a losing streak that they had. But it's not just the lobs. Like he has a lot of touch on his interior passes, especially on the bounce. Like he hit Cornett on a couple of beautiful bounce passes last night in the fourth quarter. A pocket pass that got him one. Another one in crunch time where like he was on the left block and a defender was walled up on him and he saw Cornett and threw a beautiful wraparound bounce pass that hit Cornett for an easy one right underneath the basket. He just has a great feel for hitting vertical spacers either down low or up high. And in a lot of ways that makes him the perfect fit for Wemby and Cornett because there's going to be a lot of roll and cut opportunities with the way the spacing works on this team. And with a team that can struggle to shoot the basketball from time to time, unlocking vertical spacing is a huge thing to help with that lack of shooting that they can show sometimes. I mean, there are a lot of players in the league that struggle to pass to vertical spacers. Like they can't see the reads or they just can't time the passes properly or they don't know how to put the appropriate touch on them. Like I've been watching a lot of the Lakers, obviously, and like with Austin and Luka, like as great as Austin is, it's crazy to see the difference in like the natural passing ability they have to vertical spacers. Austin had a lob last night that he threw, I think to Jackson, that was like way too late and ended up just going carrying off the backboard. It's like it's very much a difficult pass to make. And like Steph Castle is just very naturally good at it. And it's something that has stood out to me in a big way over the early part of the season. Again, 37 assists in his last 3 games and just 3 turnovers in his last 2 games. Big steps forward for Stephon Castle as a playmaker. Number 4, the Kyle Kuzma trade is beginning to pay dividends for the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks won a really fun one last night against the Mavericks. Cooper Flagg had his best game of his young NBA career. He poured in 26 points, made several huge plays down the stretch in crunch time, drawing a big foul on like a low gather step through move against PJ Washington. And then a crazy finish off of a nasty spin move on the right wing where he got into Giannis's chest and just powered through him and finished off the glass for what was a lead-changing shot in the final minute. Really nice game from Cooper Flagg. Giannis had a big bounce back. He was kind of disappointing at the end of the Houston game. He was great statistically throughout the game, but he kind of fell apart a little bit down the stretch, and Giannis just completely made up for it last night. He picked the Mavs apart in the fourth quarter, generated a bunch of clean looks on the weak side from three for guys like Bobby Portis and Kyle Kuzma, just with the attention he was gathering in the paint. Those guys were knocking those shots down, and then just being his usual indomitable self around the rim. He even hit a pull-up three along the left wing. That was a huge shot in crunch time. Just another magnificent Giannis performance in a season that's been full of them so far. And then Ryan Rollins, who continues to impress night in and night out this season. He hit what was essentially the game winner, kind of a weird sequence where Cooper Flagg ran up to rotate to Ryan Rollins. Najee Marshall was kind of up on Ryan's right arm, right hand side. And then Cooper like bailed out. And when he bailed out, Najee didn't have time to get squared up again. He was like still sitting up on Ryan's right hand. So Ryan just had an easy driving lane. Good read from him, hits the gap, hits a little left-handed layup off the glass that basically ended up being the game winner. But I wanted to shout out Kyle Kuzma here. I was high on the Kuzma trade when it happened. When it happened, if you guys remember, I talked a lot about what it was like when I was rooting for him with the Lakers. Like, he was sneaky good at role player stuff for a guy that was kind of like a good stats, bad team guy before LeBron came. When the team got serious and it became like a, hey, you're not going to play over a Danny Green unless you show the ability. You're not going to play over any of these guys that are playing on the wing unless you do these little things, unless you defensive rebound, unless you play help side defense, unless you make good reads on cuts and in spot up situations. And essentially Kyle Kuzma was forced through trial by fire to become a good role player. And right before the trade to Washington, he had become that. In that 2021 season, I thought Kyle Kuzma had become a very well-rounded, dependable role player in the NBA. But it hadn't been pretty to start in a Bucks jersey. And I think part of that was he had become a little mistake prone over the years playing unserious basketball in Washington. And then he had really struggled hitting catch and shoot threes. And so it just kind of looked like a poor fit to start with Milwaukee. But he has blossomed this year into one of the most important players on the team. In addition to doing all those little things that we talked about earlier, the defensive rebounding, the help side defense, the smart cutting and relocating off the ball, he's actually starting to score the ball consistently now and with efficiency. He's been in double figures 7 games in a row. He had 26 again last night. He's averaging 16 points per game over the course of that 7-game span on 56% from the field. And he's starting to get his three-point shot going. Over his last 4 games, on 5 attempts per game, he's hitting 42% of his threes. Hit a couple of huge ones in the fourth quarter last night. And like, again, there are many guys that have popped for Milwaukee this year as they've kind of resurged from what looked like a team that was really disappointing on paper to like kind of out kicking their coverage a little bit. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. Some basic like basketball fit stuff with the athletes on the perimeter alongside a more athletic center next to Giannis, and obviously Ryan Rollins and the way that he's blossomed this year. But a big part of it has been Kyle Kuzma. He's been one of the guys that has popped this year and that has helped Milwaukee perform better than many of us thought that they would before the start of their season. Number 5. Meanwhile, the John Collins trade is not looking like it's paying dividends for the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, this isn't John's fault. He's been very good for them, and he continues to be one of their best plus-minus guys. They're +1 with him on the floor over their last 2 losses, and -15 with him off the floor. He's been their second best on-off guy, points per 100 possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass, behind James Harden. But they look like, as a team, they sorely missed the offensive pop they were getting from Norman Powell. The idea was Bradley Beal would effectively step into that role and be able to handle it reasonably close to as well, with maybe a little bit more on-ball pop in the games where like Kawhi Leonard can't play. That was the idea. Like, you're not just trading Norman Powell for John Collins, you're trading Norman Powell for John Collins and Bradley Beal. And when you look at what happened in the Denver series and how they needed a little bit more athleticism in their front court in transition and the ability to play more functional two big lineups against some bigger teams like Denver. You look at that and you go, I see what they're thinking. You send out Norm Powell. Bradley Beal can roughly approximate it. We actually need Bradley to score, unlike what it was like in Phoenix, where he was kind of a redundancy. Like, this should make some sense. And now we have John Collins to bring that extra athleticism and pop in the front court. But unfortunately, Bradley Beal has been the disastrous combination of bad when he's on the court and generally unavailable. And now he has a weird hip injury that is allegedly going to keep him out for a while. So, like, this is a pretty extended stretch of him just not being able to play without his body falling apart. So what was supposed to be a swap of Norman Powell for a reasonable replacement player and John Collins has effectively amounted to a 1-for-1 swap for John Collins. And now the Clippers look like they sorely miss Norman Powell's shooting and off-ball scoring. There's so many different things that he did for them. He was an excellent transition scorer who would run the floor and get quick little closeout opportunities in transition and semi-transition to hit threes and drive closeouts. He was a guy that could run ball screen action as like a DHO guy, also straight up on ball screens, curling off of off ball screens, and essentially just create basic reads like, oh, you're in a drop, I can hit this shot. Oh, you're chasing me over the top, well, but you're in a deeper drop, I can get downhill off the curl. Oh, you show at the level, I can throw the pocket pass to Zoo or whoever it is that I'm getting the screen from. He just had like a lot of utility in a bunch of parts of their game. And now you're getting none of that, essentially nothing from Beal. And as much as John has done, he's a guy to anchor specific lineup groups. And I know Ty Lue's planning on starting him for a while. And we'll see if that ends up giving the Clippers a look that makes some sense. But it's really unfortunate because now he's off in Miami and he's averaging a career high 25 points per game on 64% true shooting, had 33 points last night against the Cavs. And it's looking like a disaster of a trade. And when you look at it in the context of all of the other things that have gone wrong for the Clippers to start the season, Kawhi coming out looking very much like a second-tier star, then getting hurt, tweaking his ankle. James Harden's been better as of late, but not quite as sharp as he was to start the season last year. James was great last night as he tried to dig that game out, but like, they just look old now, and they look like they're missing pop. They look like they sorely miss that Norman Powell pop as an off-ball scorer, transition weapon, and a guy that can run some action for them in the half court. And so that John Collins trade definitely not looking good for the Clippers. And there was a risk there with Bradley Beal, and that risk has gone in the negative direction. Number 6, really bad night to be a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. Darius Garland goes down with what looked like to be a toe injury. And if he re-injures that toe, that's a disaster for Cleveland. As I've talked about many times over the course of the last few months, when Darius is healthy, I view the Cavs as far and away the best team in the East. Like, if Darius was healthy and moving the way he was during the regular season last year, I'd be legitimately surprised if any other team came out of the Eastern Conference. But I've also talked about how Darius has generally struggled to stay healthy in his career. And that's what makes the East feel so wide open, is they have a clear best team, but who knows if that team's going to actually be able to operate at their individual peak because of the Darius Garland injury history. And here's the thing, when Darius is not healthy, either not on the court or not as mobile as he needs to be, they're just firmly in the middle of the pack with the rest of those Eastern Conference teams. Now, as far as looking forward, like, who cares about the regular season standings? Keep Darius out as long as it takes to get him healthy. You just need him 100% in April. You're going to beat all these teams, even if you don't have home court, as long as you're at 100%. But it's just super discouraging to see him go down again after already taking his sweet time getting back from the injury that took place in the postseason last year. And then to make matters worse, the Cavs lost in absolutely heartbreaking fashion last night. They looked kind of dead in the water, but then Sam Merrill bangs 4 consecutive threes, including a bomb, like a 35-footer off of a drop-off pass from Donovan Mitchell at the top of the key that ties the game, and all of a sudden they're right in it. And then they look dead in the water again in the final minute, and Donovan Mitchell hits like off an offensive rebound, hits like an insane running, sprinting. Like, people have no idea how difficult the shot is. He's a right-handed shooter who's sprinting from under the basket at full speed to the left corner, plants his left foot, spins his whole body around, plants his right foot, gets squared up in midair, and chucks it up in the air against the contest and just drains a three that ties the game. Just an unbelievable shot from Donovan Mitchell to tie it with 0.4 of a second left. And then Sam Merrill and DeAndre Hunter botch a switch on a sideline out of bounds play. Eric Spoelstra draws up essentially a play where you've got two guys that are standing there at the top of the key. Andrew Wiggins is the guy that's at the top, like by the top of the key, essentially. And then they have a shooter come running off the two guys, and then a quick back screen for Wiggins as he goes towards the basket. So essentially a screen-to-screener action. And there's a couple of different ways to defend that. There's only 0.4 of a second left. So the guy who's sprinting out to half court is essentially not a threat. He's going to have to catch and fire in the shortest possible amount of time while sprinting away from the basket at like 35 feet. So he's a non-threat. So over considering him makes no sense. And then with the other two guys involving the little back screen for Wiggins, just switch it. There's no worry for them to be able to turn around and fire. They basically have to catch already squared up, because if they don't, the release will take more than 0.4 of a second. And Sam Merrill basically just, I don't even know what Sam was doing, kind of jumps towards the inbounder guarding nobody. And DeAndre Hunter gets backpicked. And so Andrew Wiggins just ends up running right to the front of the rim. Jovic throws a perfect lob and Wiggins dunks it at the buzzer and the Miami Heat win. So unfortunate, because Merrill was the only reason they had a chance to win the game because of the job that he did knocking down threes at the start of the fourth quarter. But just an absolutely brutal way to lose a game. And you lose one of your most important players. Just a really rough night to be a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. Number 7, Anthony Edwards is shooting the absolute shit out of the basketball again. Ant exploded for 21 points in the third quarter against the Jazz last night on his way to a 35-point night, hitting all sorts of jumpers from three and from the top of the key in the mid-range. 23 of his 35 points last night were on jump shots. And it's fascinating because last year was the best jump shooting season of his career. He made 5 jump shots per game at 1.07 points per shot. And this year, that's up to 6 made jump shots per game at a preposterous 1.28 points per shot. And he's been deadly all over the floor. Off of the catch from three, he's 7 for 11. That's insane. He's getting 1.17 points per pull-up jump shot off the dribble jump shots. He's making 45% of his pull-up threes, making 3.1 pull-up threes per game, which leads the NBA. He's been okay from the mid-range, 12 for 28, still pretty strong. He hit several more of those last night. He started cold this season, is starting to get it going. And I mean, here's the thing. He's one of the league's best athletes. And he's on a long run of essentially being the best volume jump shooter in the league, not named Steph Curry. Just a ridiculous turn of events for a guy with his level of athleticism. And by the way, the Wolves have won 5 out of 6. They're second in offense over that span. And their defense, which was brutal to start the year, is 10th in defensive rating over that 6-game span. All right, 3 more. Number 8, Paolo Banchero and Desmond Bane saved the Magic from a disaster last night. The Mavs have been super disappointing to start the year relative to the amount of talent that they have and the expectations that sat over the team coming in. I talked about how I thought they were the team that had the best chance to hang with Cleveland in the standings in the regular season. And they just underachieved, and they almost continued that disaster last night. Another Denny Avdia late game run. The Magic led the Blazers by 9 with 2.5 minutes left. And Denny Avdia hits 2 tough catch and shoot threes. They run a really cool sideline out of bounds play, kind of similar to what we talked about with Miami, with a back screen for Jeremy Grant. And Jeremy Grant finishes a tough lob plus the foul against Paolo Banchero. That ends up putting the Blazers up by 2 with 10 seconds left. So after leading by 9 with 2.5 minutes left, they trail by 2 with 10 seconds left. Paolo makes 2 plays, and Bane makes 1 play that snatches victory from the jaws of defeat. So starts with Paolo getting Toumani Camara one-on-one out front, about 30 feet from the basket at the top of the key. And I thought Toumani made a critical mistake here. Like, Paolo's a guy that, like, you want to give space and try to force to take a difficult jump shot, but he pressured Paolo 30 feet from the basket, and Paolo just blew right by him and finished through the rim, through some contact, and got an and one. That ended up putting the Magic That ended up tying the game. And then Paolo defends Drew Holiday on the very next possession and just rips the ball away from Drew. Drew tries to drive and Paolo just takes it away from him. So huge driving layup, huge steal on Drew Holiday. Then honestly, on the sideline out of bounds on the final play there, the final sequence, there was like 2 seconds left. I thought they defended it really well. Tamani Kamara switched off onto Desmond Bane. Got a great two-handed contest right up in Desmond Bane's face without fouling. And Bane just drilled a like 30-foot drifting, fading three, moving to his right in front of that right sideline, and ends up stealing the game for the Magic. So from sitting at 4-7 with another blown lead and sitting outside the play-in to what ended up being a huge couple of plays there from Bane and Paolo to get them back into the win column at 5-6. Long way to go to get to where they need to go, especially on the offensive end, but a couple of big plays to save them from a travesty last night. Number 9, the 6-quarter Los Angeles Lakers slumber ended in the 3rd quarter last night in Charlotte. The Lakers laid an absolute egg in Atlanta. We talked about that yesterday. I won't get into more detail now, but they followed it up with an ugly first half against the shorthanded Hornets in Charlotte. They were really struggling to contain the ball. They've been having issues. This is something I've seen throughout the last few games. They're really helping off the corner, including the strong side corner. And one of the reasons why many teams don't help off the strong side corner is the specific reason having to do with how easy of a pass that is. So if someone drives to the right off of the right wing and you help off of the right corner, for a right-handed ball handler, it's like, okay, there's just the easiest little kick out pass in the world for a wide open corner three. That's why you want to help off the weak side corner and stay home on the strong side corner, because at the very least, you're going to make them make a very difficult kick out pass across the court. The Lakers have been really gapping, really trying to sit in those driving lanes. And so there's a lot of easy opportunities for teams through basic swing passes to knock down threes or to drive closeouts and get opportunities. And they were getting burned throughout the last 6 quarters. And really, it's been a consistent trend over the last couple of weeks as the Lakers have dipped down to 23rd in defensive rating to start the season. But right before the half, Luka hits a step back three. And then the Lakers get a stop, and Rui makes a beautiful kick ahead pass to Austin, who gets a layup at the buzzer. And the Lakers end up going into the half with a 2-point lead. And then JJ must have chewed them out or something, because they came out to start that 3rd quarter and looked like the Lakers that we saw for the first few weeks of the year. Just completely dominated the 3rd quarter and blew the game open. The starters went several minutes to start the 2nd half without giving up a single straight line drive, consistently chesting up on drives and keeping the ball in front. Their rotations were sharp. They rebounded the ball well. They ran for good looks. Rui paid off several sequences in that early 3rd quarter with catch and shoot threes that helped blow things open, and the Lakers cruised to a double-digit win. One of the things I've talked about with unathletic teams is you can't afford to be disengaged mentally or physically if you're not athletic, because you're already behind in terms of the mobility factor. So if you're also a step behind mentally and you're also not playing to your physical peak because you're not playing hard enough, you're really going to look bad. And we saw that for 6 quarters against Atlanta and against Charlotte. But when they do hang on to the rope in those areas, they're so good on offense that they can be a real problem. Another 62 points, 11 rebounds, and 14 assists from Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic last night, despite going 7 for 25 from 3. They're both cooling off a little bit from downtown. Big showdown with Oklahoma City again on Wednesday night. We will be watching that on playback, so make sure you guys come hang out with us on playback to watch that showdown. Lastly today, quickly, number 10, the Phoenix Suns are beginning to look as good on defense as they looked on paper to start the season. The Suns got a blowout win against the Pelicans last night. Grayson Allen came out guns blazing. He finished with 42. The Suns really blew the game open in the 2nd quarter. They were getting a bunch of stops. Then on the other end of the floor, a unit without Devin Booker, where they were running really good dribble weave and moving the ball side to side. And the threat of Grayson Allen, who at that point already had like 18 points, had kind of like started to generate a lot of attention as he was running off of screening action. And so they generated a lot of clean looks for Grayson and for Royce O'Neal over that 2nd quarter stretch. And they kind of blew the game open in that stretch, and they never looked back from there. But the Suns held the Pelicans to just 98 points. It was the 4th time in the last 6 games that they've held their opponents to 103 points or fewer. They are now the 4th best defense in the league over the course of their last 6 games. I did a preseason pod with Benjamin Garcia, who covers. He works for covers the Phoenix Suns. He also covers the Arizona Cardinals. There's a bunch of stuff in the Phoenix area, and he asked me a question on that show. He said, "Do you think the Suns are capable of being a top 5 defense?" And one of the things I talked to him about was like, hey, it's complicated. Like, do they end up tanking? How much of their young guys do they play? Blah, blah, blah. But one of the things I said to Benjamin was they certainly have that capability. And the reason why is because they have a strong foundation in the key areas you need to be good on defense. Do you have guys who can guard the opposing best players? Yeah, they have 2 great ones in the starting lineup between Dillon Brooks and Ryan Dunn that are kind of different types of players. Dillon's a little bit more of like a fire hydrant, like beat you to spots, you can't power through me kind of guy. Ryan Dunn's got like certainly a great deal of strength, but he's got a lot of length and athleticism at the position. I think that their guards are all pretty good defenders. Like Devin Booker's a good defender. Grayson Allen is a guy who's going to do his job in the defensive game plan and compete on the defensive end of the floor. Royce O'Neal plays physical defense. And then in the front court, you know, obviously with Kaman Malowich, you have a rim protection element, and he hasn't been in the rotation, but you've got bigs that have some capability to switch. And that has given them the flexibility with Oso Ighodaro to do some switching. Mark Williams is mistake prone, but he's been okay. Like, there is a good amount of defensive talent with this group, especially on the perimeter, that gives them a fighting chance every night defensively. And they're showing that over the course of the last 6 games. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more game reaction, and then again tomorrow night on Playback for Lakers Thunder. I will see you guys then.